Hello everyone, welcome back to the shop. One of the most constant questions that I'm personally getting asked by people wanting to get into the trade, get into bladesmithing, jewelry, hammers, axes, all this stuff, and especially from my online apprenticeship. How do I get an anvil for a reasonable price? Because one of the biggest things is, for me, not to overinvest. For the most part, I tell people you can, go to maybe you might get lucky at a junkyard or an estate sale or something like that. You can maybe find a large enough hammer that you can forge against in a vise, a piece of railroad track. But it's not an anvil with a pitchel and a hardy hole and a horn and all that good stuff. So I've never really had a good answer for, a good budget anvil. Well, Vevor recently reached out to me and wanted me to, put their anvils through the ringer and see what they've got. And I'm actually very curious myself. Let's give them a test. Now the folks at Vevor were kind enough to send me both a 110 pound and as well as a 60 pound for me to test out. Now, in my opinion, I feel like, and there's actually one larger, but in my opinion, the 110 and the 60 is a perfect range to kind of estimate the value of these anvils. Because, any hobbyist would get used to this, but if you're getting into like larger stocks, that 110 pound is going to be great for you because you need a certain amount of anvil for every pound of hammer you're using. Now, what's wild to me is the pricing is ridiculous. This is probably about $200, and the 60 pound is about 150, somewhere in there. It's remarkably cost effective. I've never seen pricing like that myself. This is pretty wild, honestly. For instance, this 120 pound right underneath it is 3 times as much as this one here. So I think as a beginner, this just might be in the price range of someone just dipping their toes in the water. Okay, my initial observations of these anvils, very wide faces on these anvils, which are kind of nice, for times when you're really flattening things out, less elongated for like the more London style, European style anvils. Now you have 2 hardy holes and you have 2 pitchel holes. Now what's interesting is these pitchel holes are mounted where the shelf usually would be and not on the face, which I find pretty interesting. But I think you can get used to it, no problem at all. About a 1-inch hardy, 5/8 hardy on the 60 pound. And on the 110, you have about an inch and an eighth pitchel hole here, which is much larger than most. Usually you're looking at like 1/2 inch to 3/8 or so, and then about like 3/4 down here. But actually, one thing I do really like about these is the pitchel holes and the hardy holes go all the way down. So if you were to buy this anvil, you can make your stand to where these honestly can go to the floor. Whenever you buy a new anvil, you're gonna need some dress work. That's just gonna be standard. If it's old and worn out, or if it's brand spanking new. And this is brand spanking new, so it's got very sharp edges, which need to be rounded. If you were to strike this edge with a hammer, it's very likely to chip if it's not rounded. Plus, you don't wanna be cutting sharp edges into your work, regardless. So one of the first things that we're gonna do is we're gonna just take a little bit of this edge off, as well as take all of this, powder coat or whatever finish this is off of the horn so that we're not, burning up plastic as we're working. Here I'm using my angle grinder with a flapper wheel to strike a 45-degree bevel about 3/16 wide. Then after that, you take your time and round that off to where it's nice and even. And an important rule of thumb here is you can always take more off, but you can never put back, so take your time. I find it very important to strike every sharp corner off of this anvil because just one stray hammer blow can send chips off of your anvil. Oh, now that is so much better. We don't have to worry about burning up plastic or paint as we forge rounds or scrolls over this horn, or even bottle openers at the end of this thing. And you could also sharpen that up if you wanted to. Right now it's a little dull. I'm gonna keep it that way for now. But if I turn this into more of like a finish style anvil, I can really work that tip out and make it nice and sharp. Speaking of sharp, I left these pretty sharp. I just knocked that edge down because I want to keep this as a finishing anvil, you know, like nice and sharp. Because I have this big, beautiful face, which would be great for jewelry making. And I'm really excited about this heel because that is so handy. And sometimes when you're putting in like a little rivet or something on a piece of work, and it's, you know, it's just too cumbersome to be out here. Now, my next observation, now that I'm getting this thing cleaned up, is the cast is not extremely clean inside this hardy hole. If you take a look inside of this hardy hole, the cast is a little ragged, but mainly with excess. Luckily, it's not like, you know, pits or holes or anything like that. It might just take a little time with a die grinder or a file to clean that up so that your hardy tools will fit properly. Now, the next test I want to put this, you know, 110 pound anvil through is what's called the rebound test. Just take this, you know, little steel bearing and bounce it off its surface and see how much energy is reflected back up. Because that tells me how energy efficient this anvil is going to be. You know, it's one thing for your hammer to come down and strike, but the anvil needs to come back and strike up, making it twice as efficient because you're swinging the hammer from almost two sides. Let's see what it does. Not bad. That's actually pretty darn good. Not bad indeed. I would say that's every bit of an 80%, you know, bit of energy there. Not like 85. I'm actually pretty impressed. A lot of rebound. It means it's a very hard cast. And this is in fact a cast steel anvil versus a cast iron anvil, which is either way too soft or way too hard, and it'll snap and break, especially if you wedge something really deep into that hardy hole, and it'll bust the tail off this darn thing. So far, so good. While we're at it, let's see how the 60 pound does with rebound. Pretty darn good. Not bad indeed. So far, so good with these budget anvils from Vevor. I mean, my goodness, good rebound, good, you know, structure, but honestly, we got to get some steel hot and we're going to test these for real. Now I kick the festivities off with the 60 pound anvil with a 4 pound hammer striking against a 1/2 inch bar just to draw out a scroll and just see how it handled it. Then of course I gave it some stray hits just to see if I could mark the surface with 0 luck. Now it was at this point that I was able to test out the bevel work that we did on this anvil to see if it wasn't too sharp, and it worked out great. This scroll came out beautiful. There was no marring, there was no chips and chunks out of the thing. I am actually very impressed with this little 60 pound anvil. And then the strikes on the horn didn't make it adjust or bounce anywhere. She did great. Now that we tested the 60 pound Vevor anvil, let's see what this 110 is made of. Now, I'm well aware that 1 inch by 3 inch hot bar is not going to be common in most, you know, hobby blacksmith shops. But I wanted to really test what this Vevor anvil is made of. I'm currently swinging a 12 pound hammer like there's no tomorrow and just trying to beat this thing up. And honestly, it's pretty impressive that this 110 pound is able to reflect this much energy back up to the work. I just got done drawing out at 1 inch by 3 inch rectangular bar on this anvil, and there's not a single mar, there's not a single anything going on with this thing. This is a hard anvil. All right, now in conclusion, these Vevor anvils actually held up way better than I was expecting them to, between light work and heavy stuff. And the value is honestly kind of crazy. You know, you're only looking at like $150 for the 60 pound and $200 for 110, which is ridiculous, honestly. So I think I can put my stamp of approval on these anvils. And please, if you're gonna order one, use my code down below, get 5% off. This makes me $0. I'm doing this simply for the trade and wanting to get people into it, hobbyists from, you know, all different walks of life. Now, you know, getting these anvils to where they need to be might take a little bit of work, but it's kind of great because you're able to strike the bond with you and your tool. You know, cleaning up these edges, cleaning up the hardy and Pritchell holes and you perfecting it to the way you want it to be. I think they're great, to be perfectly honest. Well done, Vevor. But anyways, thank you all for watching and happy forging.